Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast, and good morning to everyone on the West Coast. Welcome to another edition of Shadow and Act Live. Thank you for joining us. My name is Trey Mangum. I'm an editor for Shadow and Act, and today I'm joined by two outstanding actors. They star in the new historical drama film, The 24th. I have Trey Byers and Asia Naomi King, both here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, how have both of you been during this pandemic? How have you been holding up, and how have things changed for you since it first started?
I still wake up and I'm just like, is this really happening? Like, it's just so bizarre. There's no experience really for, I think, any of us to compare it to, because this is the first time that this has happened on this scale. So it's a lot, but it has also given me the opportunity to just spend a lot of time with myself, which I think is so good. We're so inundated with distractions on a daily basis that we never really have to sit with ourselves and reckon with how we are doing emotionally and physically. So it's allowed me to like take stock of where I am and what matters to me, and really just wanting to take care of myself for the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to piggyback off of that, that's an excellent answer. Yeah, I think it's true for so many of us in terms of self-care, and as rough a time as this is for the world, we get the opportunity to give ourselves the gift of knowing ourselves through this process of learning ourselves and the people that we're blessed to have, in our surroundings, whether it's a significant other, or even if it's, you by yourself or you with a pet, whatever, I know for myself, I've had to face myself in so many ways that, I never, knew existed within me, and a little bit of my patience, a little bit of my activity to inactivity, back to activity, like just finding what was genuine for me. I feel like I'm knowing myself a little bit better. I feel stronger, having had to deal with the obstacle of myself. I know my wife is probably stronger for having to deal with the obstacle of me as well. It's just, it's a challenging time. But it's also, I think, rewarding individually as we, come to terms with this thing that we can't change.
Yeah. And speaking about this film, The 24th, I kind of want to take a moment to give viewers a primer on the film, because it is a story that not many people know about. So The 24th tells the incredibly powerful and timely true story of the all-Black 24th U.S. Infantry Regiment and the Houston Riot of 1917. It was a mutiny by 156 African-American soldiers in response to the brutal violence and abuse at the hands of Houston police officers. The riot lasted 2 hours. It led to the death of 9 civilians, 4 policemen, and 2 soldiers, and it resulted in the largest murder trial in history, which sentenced a total of 19 men to execution and 41 men to life sentences. Trey, you co-wrote this film with director Kevin Wilmot, and I wanted to know how much research and time did it take to get the story right? Because I'm assuming that, it's a story we don't know much about, and if you're thinking about source material, I'm assuming that a lot of, newspapers, reports, and things like that were probably biased and incorrect about what actually happened. So how did you dive into this and get the real story of what went on?
Sure. Well, Kevin Wilmot was he's a former screenwriting teacher. That's how we met in the first place. And he's the one who brought his project to me. At the time, it was called Colored Men. This script had been written to this day now, about 30 years ago. It wasn't the 24th, but it dealt with the events of the Houston race riot of 1917. And he's the one that had a lot of the research. I mean, it's like a forensics table. I would go from Chicago to Kansas City to write with him as often as I could. And I mean, there's a book called A Night of Violence. Obviously, there are newspaper clippings, there are, court materials that are available. But to your point, it gets a little bit biased. It gets a little bit muddy in terms of who did what, because that night it was raining really hard. You can't tell who's shooting who.
Mm-hmm.
the storm was so bad and so savage. But yeah, no, a lot of research went into the riot itself and the aftermath. But it is based on true events, not the true stories. So a lot of things are fictionalized as well in terms of, we have Asia here, the romance between Boston and Marie was fictionalized in terms of, the race riot of 1917. However, it's steeped, in my opinion, in some of the cultural aspects and differences that we deal with now in terms of the relationships, whether it's with the brothers or we're dealing with colorism in this film, we're dealing with cancel culture in terms of what you think someone has been privy to sexually, and that, by that way kind of gives you an idea, an identity of who somebody is when you don't know who they are at all. Themes like that existed then and still exist now. So we were weaving both things, I think, in our film, both based out of reality, but one to a certain point completely, as honest as we could be about the race riot, and then as honest as we could be in terms of who we are today and what we know of our culture in terms of intra-racism or interracial relationships, I should say. To be as truthful as to that and show how much has not changed.
Yeah. And question for both of you, how does it feel to release this movie during a social uprising that we're going through right now? Like, I can only imagine, thinking about March and, none of this going on. And then months later, all of this is happening. I was planning to go to the premiere of the film at South by Southwest, and so excited, had, plane ticket, ready to touch down in Austin for one of the festivals. Like, one of my favorite festivals is South by. And I was thinking at the time, maybe we'll be through like 2 or 3 weeks of this, go back to normal. And months down the road, still, we are still in the pandemic, and Black people are still facing police brutality. So how does it feel to release this film at this moment?
Well, in some degrees, it feels like kismet. It feels like great, to see a film that is reflecting a time, but reflecting a time completely out of time, just to show you just how cyclical this nature truly is. And it is a thing that is able to continue to persist because the roots of where it comes from has not been altered or changed. So when we see these marches happening, when we see people calling on the defunding of the police, when we see this kind of brutality, it is because there is a legacy in place here of Black brutalization that has been allowed to continue throughout the decades. And unless we push back against it in the same way that these brave men chose to push back against it, unless you show your aggressors that you too can be aggressive, that you will stand up for yourself, that you will defend yourself, that you have dignity and integrity and humanity, and you want honor as much as the next person, but you're not just going to lay down and die. When you show that to your aggressor, that is how things will begin to change, in my opinion. And I think in the opinion of these people.
I love that. Yeah, no, 100%. And I can't say it any better than that. That's great, Asia. I think also, in terms of this story being a part of our history, isn't that the point? Have been deprived of this story, of so many stories, in terms of what our national identity is. What we've done, and a response isn't the human, it's the response that the human takes as a tactic to get you to listen. And at the end of the day, I think that, again, this movie, I say it often, is a point of reference. It's a point of origin in terms of what we're dealing with now. And if we're deprived of that history, how will we know how to speak to one another? That's our language, that's our communication, and it's broken. To the point to where we can't have a conversation, we can only be told. And because we don't have the knowledge of what was, we can't speak back in a way that, in terms of compassion and understanding, in a way that will be received. And we get generalized. I think the response that we're getting from police brutality is a generalization of who you are and what you're capable of. So there's no conversation. It's do what I say, and even then, even if you do what they say, You know what I mean? As we've seen play out before our eyes. So, I mean, it's all that Asia said. And in addition to that, it's just history you haven't been taught, and history that you should know in order to know who you are, you know, as an individual, so that we can know who we are as a nation.
Yeah. And Asia, I like that you brought up, you know, the calls to defund and abolish the police, because I thought about that when I was watching this film, because, you know, you have these men who are they're soldiers for the United States, and they're being brutalized by police officers. When you think about how, you know, police were first established, I saw a tweet, I think this morning, from Bree Newsom, who was the woman who took down the Confederate flag at the South Carolina state grounds. And she said, you can't reform an entity that was slave patrols before. And you see how, you know, it has evolved over time, but you can't inherently disrupt that. And that's one thing I think this film points out, is that, you know, you have these men who are fighting for their country, who went to serve for their country, and they're being brutalized by the police in this horrific manner. So I think that, you know, this is a period piece, but it's so timely. It's so timely because it's things that we're still thinking about now, and hopefully looking to situations like this to show us how we can like correct these wrongs and not move in that same era. Yeah. And speaking of which, period dramas, we don't really see a lot of Black romance and period films. There's only really one that I can remember of recent memory, which I saw at Sundance. Asia, you were also in it, Sylvie's Love.
But all the period romance.
We don't really see it to the same extent as we see white actors and white characters in the same vein. It's like that's to an extent that doesn't really exist for us. So how is that approaching this romance between your two characters?
I mean, I love that so much, because it's like, that is what life is about. No matter what is happening, regardless of what time period you are in, what country you live in, it is in our nature to seek joy, to seek love, to seek light. You know, that is what it is to be human. And so I thought it was essential that Trey captured that so beautifully in this script, this relationship between these two characters, and that even in the midst of all this chaos, regardless of their very different backgrounds, that they could find each other in these beautiful moments and have shared that time together. And like you said, that isn't something you typically see with Black people. I mean, but we could go down a very long list of the things you don't typically see with Black people.
Yes,
so I just found it incredible that was also incorporated into this story, because it really does demonstrate. I mean, so much was amazing and incorporated into the story, including like brotherhood, which I like. I love that so much, you know. But like to see that kind of love of your fellow soldier, the love of, you know, someone you find attractive that you want to know more, like self-love, the kind of self-love that makes you want to stand up for yourself. Like, to me, it all kind of culminates into the many ways in which we choose to live in this world and live in love and live in light. And yeah, it's essential. It means everything to me that it's in there.
Yeah. It felt so pure. It felt like no agenda other than to know and to grow. I mean, these characters, they had their, you know, the rest of their lives, or at least they thought, or maybe they add to the rest of their lives in this particular piece. It reminds me, I'm from a military family. We have a lot of military history in my family. And thinking about, you know, my Uncle Sonny passed away. He died in Vietnam, in his second tour of Vietnam. But the honor of that man and the family that he left behind, the love that he had for them, you know, it's like thinking about growing older and having these stories of love in front of you in your history. You seek the love that you see, whether it's your parents or your grandparents. And that is, you know, with my Uncle Sonny, with so many people in my life that I've seen, that I know, that have been married for 50 years. You know, that's the type of love that, you know, I was really interested in seeing, something that was just a gentleman and a gentlewoman, despite what the world thought. And, you know, to watch them grow in a pure way, you know, it added to the tragedy, but it also added to the hope that you have this, you can find something like this in life, despite what society says. And even if you kill the body, you can't kill the love. And, you know, in this case, where Marie is the one to carry on the spirit of love and that hope, you know, that's what I see, you know, in terms of our contemporary culture. She went off to be somebody's grandmother who told these stories and passed on the legacy of love to the next generation, whose love will hopefully look like their love. You know, that's special.
Yeah. Before I move on to the next question, just want to remind our viewers to ask questions for Trey and Asia in the comments, and we will try to answer them. So next question, what is the major takeaway that you hope people watching this film will leave after viewing it?
You know, I think for me, growing up, so much of learning about our history was only ever hearing about our struggles, and that was it. It was like, you were slaves, then there was the civil rights and hoses, and it's like just always being beat up on. And I love knowing the rebellion in us, the defiance in us, because like, yeah, we had Martin, but we also had Malcolm, you know, and it's important to see the totality of all that we were and can be and will continue to be. And yeah, so I just hope that people, like Trey said earlier, just knowing a little bit of where our people have come from, what we have done, you know, to stand up for ourselves, to protect ourselves and protect the people that we love, and to hold our own honor in our own right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me, I hope that this thing sparks curiosity. I hope that it sparks a curiosity for more stories, not just, you know, stories that had not a bad ending or a sad ending, I should say, but also stories that show our nobility. I mean, I hope that people feel the pride of these soldiers, the love between Boston and Marie, and I hope that they're not afraid to dig deep into the controversy that is our nation. We're built on the foundation of slavery and murder and theft. And if that's the foundation, if that's the root of the tree, what do you think the branches are? What do you think the bark is? You know, it's all steeped in this, and we don't know what to call it because we don't know those stories. Again, this story now on Sunday became 103 years old. This case, these lives, that, you know, this event, 103 years old to the day, like this past Sunday. And how many more stories are hundreds of years old? Let's dig deep. Let's find them, not to throw them in anybody's faces, but to educate us about who we are, so that we can know who we're going to be. We can decide. You know, you need your history. You need your genetic gene pool. You need to know the times of those days and our days, so that you can stop the cycle. And we can, and it starts with ourselves. So I hope that we're inspired to continue to learn more about our history, because it's just revealing more about who we are, and it gives us, you know, the vocabulary to use in our times of need and in our times of growth.
Yeah. So we have a very interesting question from a viewer who asks, how much do you credit your formal training to how you approached your roles in this film? And do you have any advice on auditioning for drama school?
Well, I want to say I credit my formal training to being invited into this film by Trey, because we went to school together. But yeah, I loved our time at Yale, and it did just that. The roles that I got to, the roles and the scene work and just the play, it allowed me to really learn just how to navigate and explore a character. And it also taught me that, like, no matter what room you are in, like, you are an actor and you belong there and you have a job and a purpose to do, and like, and your role in that is just as important as anyone else's on the stage or in front of the camera. And my advice in terms of auditioning for grad school is to always find pieces that you're passionate about. Really, really seek out writers, even if it's not something that's been published. Seek out the things that speak to you, so that when you are performing it, it will come from, like, in your bones, because it will be so real and true for you.
I can't do nothing with that. She said it. Yeah, no, yeah. My education gave me the tools that set me free, I think, just in general. I mean, there's natural, and then there's skill. And for me and for my money, I like working with Asia. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to, have the conversation with her. She got it because she had the language. She knew where she was going to come from. You can trust her with it. You don't have to, like, hover over her process because of what she comes to the table with. And as an actor, I like to be, I like to be similar in along those terms. And that was afforded me that by dealing with so many different, playwrights and different actors and different directors that I met in my time through all of the schooling that I had, not just at Yale, but others as well. And, again, the more you know, the more you grow. And ultimately, when you have those tools, I don't think that you have to, I mean, you always got to look, you always got to dig as deep. I would suggest dig as deep as you can. Because there's always some level or layer of something that hasn't been explored. And that's the beauty of art, but at the same time, I just, I feel like education is just the key to giving you the confidence to be able to go there and to have the lingo to speak. Drama school, like I said, man, I can't top that. That was amazing. That's exactly what it is. Identifying what it is that you want to say, identifying what you feel is the most personal and will allow you to be the most free. I mean, people can work with freedom. And I think that's what everybody's looking for. How do you interpret something? This is in terms of whether you're auditioning for drama school or for a movie or for a play. Like, how can you interpret something in a way that can be, that can evolve? It's all a starting place, and just being open to evolve. I remember with the room with Ron Van Loo when I think I did Othello. And it was one of my pieces, and just being able to receive what he said, because my first one wasn't, it wasn't all that. It was what it was. But ultimately, when you approach it with as much freedom as you can, I think people can see where you're trying to go and help you get the rest of the way, and that's enticing.
All I know is I don't know what's in the water at Yale Drama School, but so many Black creatives who are, like, doing everything come out of there. So, like, shout out to all of y'all who come from that program. And both of you are coming off of stints from iconic, long-running television series that, in their own ways, in different ways, change not only how we look at Black-led television series, but just television in general. What's the one thing that you learned from playing these two characters on Empire and How to Get Away with Murder?
Ooh, that's hard. I will say, being on a show for 6 years, I hope I learned more than just one thing. I guess it's kind of that same, like, thing that I told you about, like, I learned kind of in drama school that was kind of reinforced here, because of course, being on How to Get Away with Murder, I'm walking to a space and I'm being in a room with people that I really admire, like Viola Davis and Cecily Tyson. And it was that kind of being in the room with these women who have come to work, you know, who are amazing and incredible and like so super kind that it almost throws you off, because it's like, wait, why are you being so nice to me? I had to remind myself in those moments, like, okay, you're an actor, you're here for a reason, you belong here. And so it's just that kind of reinforcing that idea of like, no matter what, no matter who is on camera with you, you deserve to be there, you belong there, and you have a job to do. So do your job, set yourself free, do your job. Don't get too starstruck, do your job.
Yeah. Well, for me, with Empire, I don't know. I mean, it was such a whirlwind of energy and action and different storylines and ever-changing storylines. You know what I mean? And you know, just to keep up, it was really interesting. I think one of the biggest things for me was to, as things sped up, I didn't speed up with them. That helped me pay attention. It helped me to focus more and and by way of that, being able to kind of dictate what it was that I wanted to do per season. One season I'll work on this particular thing or this particular thing, because I know that, you know, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow with so many people that are coming into our show, whether it's, you know, Forrest Whitaker or Jennifer Hudson or whomever it is that you get the chance to work with. And at the end of the day, I wanted to be centered. So I think more than anything, it made me a bit more of a rock, if you will, because I couldn't go with the energy and be able to maintain my sense of self and my belonging on the show, which kept me from being intimidated and made me feel a little bit more useful just in general. And that helped a lot actually with the 24.
Yeah. One final question. A lot of us have way, way more downtime than we did a few months ago. So what advice would you give to any Black creatives, whether aspiring writers, directors, actors? What advice would you give them on improving their craft during this period we're in right now?
I mean, yeah, we have a lot of time. So use it wisely, which doesn't mean like force yourself to write or, I don't know, film yourself on your phone over and over again every day, but however that manifests, but like take the time to hone in on what your vision is. Mm-hmm. What is your vision? What do you want to share with the world? What matters deeply to you? Figure out what that is, and then figure out how you can create that, and then figure out who's going to help you along the way.
Absolutely. And again, to piggyback on that, like with this time, there's a lot of things to watch. And when you find yourself, you know, out of new things, go back to the old things. Go back. I mean, when I say the old things, I mean, some people might not feel it, but go back to Cagney, go to Sidney Poitier. You know what I mean? Go all the way back and see how the art evolved. Fall in love with it. Let it be magical. You know, let yourself go, be transported into a time, you know, that we remember or that we know nothing about, in order to inspire those new thoughts, you know, and inspire your own creativity. It's there for us.
Great advice. So I know a lot of people are probably taking notes. Someone said they're already thinking about, now there's so many talented Black creators went to Yale. They're making note of that. So I guess we may have someone who's trying to follow y'all's footsteps for that. And someone also said, thanks for all the affirmations that you both delivered during this. But yeah, thank you both so much for joining us today, everyone. The 24th is now available for purchase on video on demand, most major platforms, probably all major platforms. Check it out. And again, thanks for you joining us today.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.